All right. Stephen Mosher is the president of the Population Research Institute. He's an internationally recognized authority on China. He's written many books about China, including one recently, Bully of Asia, Why China's Dream is the New Threat to World Order. Are you there, Stephen?
I am, yes. Good to be with you today.
Thanks for coming on. Today in the New York Times, there was a story. Senior Trump administration officials have pushed American spy agencies to hunt for evidence in support of an unsubstantiated theory that a government laboratory in Wuhan, China, was the origin of the coronavirus outbreak. And their basic thrust on this is they say some analysts are worried that the pressure from senior officials could distort assessments about the coronavirus and be used as a weapon in an escalating battle with China. Is that your concern? Are you concerned that they're going to distort our impressions of China?
No, I'm not concerned about that at all. I'm concerned that we get to the truth about the fact that this coronavirus was under investigation, being researched in the P4 laboratory, the high containment lab in Wuhan, and it leaked from that lab. I think the trail of breadcrumbs leads us exactly to that conclusion. I wrote about that at the same time that my friend Senator Cotton brought up the subject. And look, bioweapons research in China is real. Recombinant technology being used to create new coronaviruses that are more deadly than anything you find in nature are real. And look, the head of the Institute of Virology's research program in coronaviruses, a Dr. Shi Zhangli, said recently, she said, we checked our records and we made sure that none of the viruses that we had collected from bats in caves matched the new coronavirus, the CCP virus, as I call it. Well, that's fine. They don't occur in nature. It might have been one that she manufactured in the lab. However, she needs to show us those lab records.
All right. So you call China the bully of Asia. What do you mean by that?
Well, for the last 29 years, China has been in a Cold War with us. I can actually date the beginning of that Cold War because it was in October of 1991 when Deng Xiaoping called together his senior leadership and said, the old Cold War is over. The United States has won. The Soviet Union has lost and collapsed. The new Cold War is now beginning between China and the United States, and we will win this one. And you know what? If your enemy says you're at war, then you're probably at war, whether you want to be or not. And now we understand that the war, is across all domains, except the kinetic. We're not firing bullets at each other. But we now know that it's across the trade domain, the cybersecurity domain, and there's a new domain that China's at war with us on, and that is the health and well-being domain, the health domain.
Why is it? What is the New York Times' interest in protecting China? Why do they not just want to follow, as you say, the breadcrumbs and find out what's going on?
Well, when I published an article back in February in the New York Post, it was banned immediately by Facebook because the fact checkers said that it was a conspiracy theory. The fact checkers actually consulted with a woman by the name of Danielle Anderson, who works with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, has been there many times and has a research project there. So she was hardly a disinterested party, right? If the Wuhan Institute of Virology turns out to be the source of the leak, which it is, then everybody associated with that lab from the beginning until now, including the people who approved the funding from the United States to that lab, which I think we're just in the process now of cutting off, they're all complicit in this to one degree or another. Their reputations are going to suffer as well. So there's a lot of professional pushback from virologists who have a connection with the lab to say, no, it couldn't have leaked from the lab. It must have come from a bat, flying 700 miles from its bat cave and landing in someone's bat soup in Wuhan. That's how it got started. I don't believe that for a minute.
But why doesn't the Times just cover the case fairly? Just hear from both sides. Why are they're obviously pushing to defend China from the evil Donald Trump. Where does that come? Is that just Trump hate, or is there some connection between the Times and China that makes it worth their while?
There are a lot of connections between once great media companies in the United States and China, because Chinese billionaires have been buying up magazines and other news organizations in the United States for a long time, precisely to wield influence and precisely for moments like this, so they can be used as propaganda tools, not capitalist tools, but socialist, communist tools to advance the Chinese Communist Party's narrative. And people need to understand how bizarre that narrative is. Their narrative for the pandemic is this, that we in the United States developed a bioweapon in our labs in Fort Detrick, Maryland, and we took it deliberately to Wuhan during the military games in late October, and we spread it from there throughout the Chinese population. So in their view, their story is it's all our fault. And I think they're really admitting too much in this. They're admitting, that in suggesting that it's an American bioweapon, it suggests to me that they themselves were looking into ways of enhancing dangerous coronaviruses to make them more lethal and deadly. That's actually called gain of function research. It's something we used to do in the United States up until 2014, at which time we called a halt to it because the risk outweighed the reward. What was the risk? Well, the risk in NIH documents is this. A PPP might be created. What is a PPP? It's a pathogen of pandemic potential. That is a deadly virus capable of unleashing a pandemic. Isn't that what we're exactly facing now? We stopped the research. They continued it at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and I think we're paying the price right now for China's recklessness.
Recently in The Atlantic, there was a piece by two law school professors, one from Harvard, one from the University of Arizona, and here's what they wrote. They said, in the great debate of the past 2 decades about freedom versus control of the network, China was largely right and the United States was largely wrong. Significant monitoring and speech control are inevitable components of a mature and flourishing internet, and governments must play a large role in these practices to ensure that the internet is compatible with the society's norms and values. What is it like for the Chinese to be living under the government they live in?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party certainly has its own norms and values. And those in China who violate those norms and values wind up being punished. In one way, they can lose their job. They can be arrested. They can be disappeared. China has a network of what are called black jails, that is, jails that that the public existence of which is not admitted, where people can be disappeared for weeks, months, or years at a time with no accountability. Their family has no idea where they are. They can be tortured, forced to write confessions. And once they're suitably, the word in China today is harmonized. Once they're suitably harmonized to be compatible with the current party line, they're then trotted out as broken men, broken women to give their rehearsed confession to all the crimes that the Chinese Communist Party has asked them to commit. I mean, it's 1984, Brave New World, come alive in real time, and we're watching it now unfold. We don't want to be harmonized in the United States. We want to each be allowed to sing our own tune, have our own music sheet.
There have always been horror stories coming out of China. There were the forced abortions. I believe you had a role in exposing the forced abortions. If I'm speaking from, you did, yes, okay. And now I'm hearing these stories of forced organ donations, which sounds to me like some bad thriller movie. Is there truth to that?
I was in China in 1979 and 1980. I was the first American social scientist allowed to do research in country in China. I was there for a year. I found myself caught up in the beginning of the one-child policy. I saw women arrested for the crime of being pregnant. Yes, being pregnant was a crime under the one-child policy. They were taken, locked up for weeks, sometimes months at a time. And ultimately, they were forced to undergo abortions and sterilizations. They were sterilized after the late-term abortions to make sure they wouldn't bother the party again with an unplanned pregnancy. These women were, in many cases, 7, 8, and 9 months along. The abortions were done with lethal injections into the womb, killing the unborn child. The child was then delivered by cesarean section. So, a government that is willing to do that to its own people, that is willing to do that to young mothers, what won't it do? There have been credible reports of forced organ donation in China for the last 25 years. I believe that they're still happening today. China does more organ transplants than any country in the world. They claim that everything is voluntary, but then they claim that the young mothers who were 9 months pregnant, weeping and crying as they were dragged off to the medical center for forced abortion, they claimed those were voluntary abortions too, and they weren't. The sad thing about modern technology is that we've given a technology called ECMO to China, which is extracorporeal membranous oxygenation. It's how we keep people alive, in some extreme cases of the coronavirus, by protecting their lungs, allowing their lungs to recover while we oxygenate their blood outside their body. Basically, they're using ECMO in China to shut off blood to the brain, killing the patient, killing the victim, I should say, while keeping the organs alive so they can all be harvested. It used to be you could only get a liver or a lung, and then the rest of the organs would not be usable because too much time will have passed without blood flow. But using ECMO, you can harvest all the organs. And so instead of just being worth $150,000 dead, now a poor Uyghur or Kazakh or Tibetan or political dissident is worth about $750,000 dead. All of their organs can be harvested and sold. This is going on in China right now.
I'm out of time, but I really would like to just ask, what, in brief outline, as briefly as you can, please, what would you like to see the policy of the United States be toward China at this point?
Well, I would like the United States and the world to recognize that what we're dealing with is the Third Reich of the 21st century, that all the crimes that the Nazis committed are being committed in China today against innocents. The Chinese people are the first and foremost victims of the Chinese Communist Party. But now the world has been victimized. There must be consequences. China must be forced to pay the butcher's bill. And hopefully, if we support Taiwan, if we contain China with the help of our allies, if we redirect our supply chains away from China to Southeast Asia, India, even back to the United States, China will die a kind of death by 1,000 cuts. The Communist Party will be overthrown, and the world will be a much safer place.
A yes or no question. Does Trump know this?
Trump has been on China's case since 1999. He published a book that year saying China's cheating on trade, cheating on everything. We have to have accountability. So, yeah, there will be a reckoning.
Thank you very much. Stephen Mosher, the book is Bully of Asia, Why China's Dream is the New Threat to World Order. Thanks a lot. I hope you'll come back and we'll talk some more.
Look forward to it.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Andrew Klavan Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all our future content.